Good morning, ladies and gentlemen of the press. Thank you very much for attending our regular Monday morning press briefing. Our first speaker today is Honorable Kenson Kansimer, the Minister with responsibility for education, youth development and sports, and digital transformation. The Minister will have a few updates from his ministry, as well as field your questions afterwards. Minister?
Good morning. I hope everybody is doing okay. From the Ministry of Education, there's an update on August salaries. We did announce as a government that for the first time in our history, cooks, cleaners, security guards, who often take unpaid vacation in the month of August, they will be paid for the first time in our history. So the ministry, the government of St. Lucia is sticking to that. We are on track to ensure that when every civil servant gets paid at the end of this month, that they will be given that salary as well. So these individuals, we know, have children, we know they have families, they have individuals that will be attending school. So I'm very proud as the Minister of Education that these families will have that salary that will help with their students' ambitions. I was not able to do this because I had to leave on Carnival Monday night for Glasgow, Scotland, to attend the Commonwealth Games. But I want to, as the Minister of Youth, I want to congratulate our young artists in the creative sector for a very successful 2026 Carnival season. The likes of Keisha K becoming St. Lucia's first female groovy monarch. I want to, as Minister of Youth, officially say congratulations to her, Ezra, and all the artists who played their part in making 2026 version of St. Lucia Carnival the amazing feat that it was. But I did enjoy Carnival Monday, but I had to leave at 6 that night to head to the Euronora International Airport en route to Glasgow, Scotland for the Commonwealth Games being held, the 2026 version of the Commonwealth Games being held in Glasgow. As you would know, during that event, we had some athletes, male athletes, particularly Michael Joseph was the athlete, the only athlete who qualified for the finals in the 400 meters. Congratulations to Michael, an Olympian from the community of Massad Grosley, doing very, very well. Conditions were very cold in Scotland, not the ideal you would expect in the July month, but our athletes certainly did well at this event. Immediately after, I had to attend the Caribbean and the Central American Games that it was held in Santo Domingo, Dominican Republic, and we sent a number of athletes over there. St. Lucia acquitted themselves very well. I want to say congratulations to our ladies. Our ladies have been doing very well in sport in St. Lucia. For the first time in St. Lucia's history, our netball team, they were able to capture a bronze medal at the Caribbean and Central American Games held in Santo Domingo. So congratulations to our women. They did very well against Trinidad in that very first game. They were very competitive, but were unable to win that game. They came back, did very well against Bermuda, defeated Bermuda very comprehensively, did very well against Jamaica, held their own against Jamaica. They were able to come back and defeat Santo Domingo in Santo Domingo. So they played very, very well. Good netball there. I will say the inclusion of Megan Nestor, an infusion of the young with some of the veterans, they did very well for that national netball team. I'm very proud of the work put in by the administrators, the Netball St. Lucia Association, doing very, very well. I'd like to say congratulations to them on achieving that feat. It would mean that St. Lucia has pretty much medaled under the tutelage of this government at every major global event except one. We can say that we have a Olympic medal, 2. We can say that we have CAC medals. We can say Pan American, Commonwealth. We have done well at every global event. I don't think any government can boast of that level of achievement in sport in a 5-year period, except one. The only sport that we've not dominated on a global level as yet is football. but we will get there. You know, we are putting in the work. This government has certainly invested in football more than any government have in our history, and we're certainly expecting very soon to reap those rewards. So congratulations to the St. Lucia netball team. Very well done for them. Luc Chevrier, he won a silver medal in sailing. Very close, very competitive, keenly contested event. But congratulations to Luc Chevrier, community of Marisil, getting a bronze medal at the CAC Games. Also on a global level, JD Emmanuel became St. Lucia's first athlete to get to a final of a global under 20 World Championship. She did very well. She ran 11.28 seconds, which is the new national record for women in this event. So she did very well. She ran that time in the first heat, and subsequently fell off in terms of time, but she acquitted herself very well. She opened the eyes of the world to what's happening in track and field in St. Lucia, and so we are very proud of her. She is getting ready to move on to University of Texas, where she will be joining Naomi London, Julian Alfred in that setup in Texas as we work towards having a 4x1 relay team in our future. So we're certainly hoping and looking forward to that. Finally, in terms of my announcements, I think everybody would know by now, the Caribbean Premier League T20 competition is ongoing, CPL T20 2026. St. Lucia victorious last night, heart palpitations for many of us. I saw a meme where somebody had a blood pressure monitor when watching the St. Lucia Kings. I think it's a little bit more than that. You had to check your pulse, you had to check your pressure, you had to check. I think everything goes up when you're watching St. Lucia, but we were able to win that first game, so I want to encourage all St. Lucians to purchase your tickets and attend matches in St. Lucia. Our first game is on the 12th, Wednesday the 12th at Beauséjour, the 14th, the 16th, 19th, and the 21st. We have 3 St. Lucians as part of our CPL team this year. Keon Gaston, McKenny Clark, Akim Ogis on that team. Team that seems to be very well put together. I saw a lot of people commenting on paper whether or not we had the team to do it. I do believe we have a team to get it done this year, and I'm just certainly hoping that all of St. Lucia will be out in their blue as the St. Lucia take on the rest of the region in CPL action. Questions?
Good morning, Minister. Just one question for me. I know you mentioned a little earlier about the salaries for teachers coming in August, but since we're starting the new school year pretty soon, can we just get a little brief intermission on the work the Ministry of Education will be doing to prepare schools for the next school year?
Yes, so this year we ensured that our summer works program started in earnest. My cabinet colleagues would tell you that I put a lot of pressure on them to identify some of what was needed at the schools in the various constituencies, identify some of the skilled laborers and contractors in the communities to ensure that we did not have summer works going into the new term. I did say that very early on, that under my watch, I would not want for the first day of school for any works, any noises from works to be happening as students get back into class. I can say that most, not all, most of the schools have received some level of attention. As I announced earlier, when I became Minister of Education, we did have an analysis of over $150 million needed if we had to get all schools up to a particular modern level that we would want. But we won't be able to do it that way. So we've been, getting the main interventions needed for most schools, and we've definitely started in earnest. Most of the schools have actually completed some of the summer works programs, some not started as yet, but I will be getting a comprehensive report this week. But the expectation is that very, very soon we should be wrapping up those little works. As you mentioned, that I'll take the opportunity to also indicate that we do intend as a Ministry of Education to ensure that every student walking into Form 1 receives the laptop within the first week. In times past, we've had to wait because of course, some of the procurement issues we'd have some form of, disruption. But we took the approach that very early we were going to procure those laptops so that by the end of the first week, every student in Form 1 would be ready to go, ready to do what they need to do in terms of use of technology and be on par with the rest of the world.
Well, two questions, one about sports, one about education, but I'll deal with education first. Sort of around the carnival time, there was some news that came out, an announcement from CXC will be phasing out school-based assessments for non-practical examinations. I just wanted to get your thoughts on that. We hadn't really heard a figurehead speak about that change that CXC is forwarding for the next academic year or the academic year after this one. So what's your take on that proposal from CXC?
I think CXC has been in existence for a very long time, and they've always tried to be in tune with the time. They've realized, they've identified some of the issues we've had with the assessment of students and their progress, and they've tried from time to time to tweak certain activities that are ongoing to make it better, to make it more modern, and to ensure that we are getting it right when it comes to education in our countries. The fact of the matter is, what is recommended most times, there are proposals. You would sit and you would analyze all the different conversations. And with education, there is no one way to do anything in education. No one way. There is every way that is suggested from an individual. It is suggested from a standpoint that this is the best way to do it. And as I will say, sometimes it sounds like this is the only way to do it. And for me, I've taken the approach that I listen to a lot of the technocrats, the arguments, and even within our own circles, there are different levels of advice given to ministers, different ways of viewing things. And so sometimes you take the approach where you look at the organization and its history and what they are trying to do, and you say, well, okay, you can give it a chance to see how it actually unfolds. And so they've made that recommendation. We've had a lot of conversation on whether it will be effective. I believe that there is some merit to it. There are some questions to how it is actually going to work and function in the best interest of our students going forward. But certainly the hope is to get it right. And we certainly hope that when we do our assessment that we are getting it right.
My second question now is, might be a little bit more controversial, but earlier you spoke about our medal hall, but we know that Julian Alfred, one of our promising athletes, will not be competing at the Commonwealth Games, and the St. Lucia Olympic Committee had a very interesting response to that situation. What's your take on her not competing, or it not falling in line with, I guess, what's in best place for her, but us missing out on maybe not claiming a Commonwealth Games medal?
She did participate in the Commonwealth Games the last time. She did win a medal then. From my communication with the team, she was slated to have participated at the Commonwealth Games in Glasgow, and they did decide as a team that it may not be in her best interest for her to participate. I'll say one thing. As a former athlete, I am very wary, and now minister, I'm very wary of stepping in as a minister and, for lack of a better way of phrasing it, forcing an athlete to participate at an event that the entire technical team around her has advised her not to participate. Because here's what, I was in Glasgow. The place was cold. It was late July and it was cold. It would have been remiss of me as a minister to place a call to Julian Alfred and say, Julian Alfred, I believe you should be participating at Commonwealth Games. And as a matter of fact, I will insist that you give due consideration and reconsider and participate, only for Julian Alfred to have suffered an injury in Glasgow. And I think at that time, all of St. Lucia would have been, oh, the minister that called her and told her to go to Glasgow, and look at now, we have an Olympian, and look, she's injured. And injuries are so funny. It could have been her last event. Now, at the end of the day, I see the wisdom and I see the need, and I would have been the happiest minister to have been in Glasgow to see her donning our colors and winning gold in the 100, gold in the 200. And if we had a 4x100 meter relay team, gold in 4x100 meter relays. That's what I would have wanted. But the fact of the matter is, the decision was taken by the individuals in consultation with her. Whether or not it was communicated in a timely fashion to the Olympic Committee is obviously up for discussion. But you have to understand the Olympic Committee's mandate. It is to actually put out St. Lucia's best athletes to the rest of the world. So their position is not incorrect. We need Julian Alfred to be representing St. Lucia at most of the global events. And that is what they will endeavor to do, put the best athletes out of representing the country. That is their mandate. And so it's an ongoing conversation. We do have a method of selecting the athletes for global events that I believe at the end of the day will be followed. And so I have no doubt that in the coming years, Julian will be participating at those sort of games once it's within her best interests.
I don't think we've had a conversation since the 2026 sitting of CPE examinations.
We have not.
We have not. While we continue to boast both local and regional achievements, of course, I think there is conversation that our students are not better prepared for the transition from primary into secondary school. So you have teachers and students who are working very hard for the CPE examination, but that sort of academic excellence is not replicated beyond the primary school level. My question is, how are we better preparing our students to excel?
How do we know that it is not better? How can we make that? How can we have no objective measure? Let me answer your question. Thank you. Good question. The fact of the matter is there was an adjustment to what we knew as common entrance exams 4 years ago. All right. The fact of the matter is those students who transition from primary school to secondary school, they are in that sort of transition phase for 4 years. We will not know if they have been better prepared, if they are doing better, until they have written the exam that measures the progress at the end of that 5-year period, which is what we call CXC and CSEC. So I think it would be remiss of us to have any objective measure as to whether or not it works or not until we've seen how that cohort performs at next year's CXC examination. Now, do I have concerns? I can tell you, as a father who just went through that process with twin girls writing that examination, of course, I'm extremely nervous about a measurement of somebody's IQ or academic achievement based on based on multiple choice and an assessment done before, SBA sort of assessment. I do have concerns about that. I do have questions about it. But for me, it would be remiss of me to come in and just push it aside almost instantaneously without having the objective measure as to whether or not this absolutely works. I have my doubts. As a matter of fact, I can confess to you I have more doubts than actually belief in that right now. But again, I think making a final decision will be fortified based on the scientific measure of how the students are doing in the next couple of years.
I totally agree with you, but I think the reality is such that you have a student, let's say, who's attained a very high score, passed for the St. Joseph's Convent, and the expectation is that sort of performance is supposed to be replicated beyond primary school. So you expect that student, upon graduation and completion of their 5-year tenure at the secondary school, the expectation is that student is going to graduate with 6 1s and just about a 1-2. And, on the contrary, that performance is dismal.
Okay, so there's something in science called ecological fallacy. And that is a textbook example of an ecological fallacy. The fact of the matter is, when I attended the Grosley Primary School, I got grades that sent me to Leonidas Comprehensive Secondary School and sent probably about 5 others to St. Joseph's Convent and St. Mary's College. If you look at the progress of these individuals vis-a-vis mine, most of those who attended St. Mary's College and St. Joseph's Convent, they don't have a degree. I do, and a master's. So looking at just one sort of example of how things happen without the entire realm of the scientific analysis would yield results that we not be able to use accurately. We need to ensure that we consult the science. As a Minister of Education, I will not be making rash decisions just based on emotions, because If you listen to the people around you, scrap it, go back to common entrance. If that is what we are doing, we have to use the correct measures to ensure that we're doing it right.
Questions for me with regards to we sit in a classroom and we hear those cliche phrases like our teachers are preparing us for the world of work. When we actually enter the world of work, young people are sort of mistaken for being incompetent. And I think one of the reasons is because we claim that we're preparing our children for the world of work. Yes, mathematics, social studies, and all of these, core subjects are pivotal to one's academic development. But how concerned are you that many young people in St. Lucia don't know what the labor code is, what it permits, what a sick leave form entails, how to deal with conflict in the work environment. And so you have these students who are coming straight from South Louis and they're plunged into the work environment unknown, these things unknown to them. How concerned are you about that?
It is my biggest concern with the education sector because for me, even in sport, if you look at the direction we've taken in sport, it's sports for life. So from the grassroots program, you're supposed to be having life-altering programs to ensure that our young people are developing into more meaningful citizens. And so that is what the education sector is supposed to be doing. I can say, in all honesty, we have a lot of that actually going on in terms of ensuring that life skills are instilled in our children. Because I keep saying to my twins that at the end of the day, you can have all the grades in the world, but a nasty attitude will not land you a job. You will not be successful in life. So I think with most of what we're doing in our school system is trying to ensure that we have that balance. Do we need more of that? I think we do. I think we will be implementing a lot of programs that are off the books, that are more, life skills centered, team building, ethics in education, in life, and that sort of thing to ensure that we have a more well-rounded workforce in the future.
Correction at any time. The UniPass grant, I would have perused the eligibility requirements, and one of those is that the student must have been in year 2 for them to receive that sort of financial assistance. How does that cater to a student How does that cater to, if your government says that they're trying to assist people who are not financially capable of, paying off that degree, but, there is that requirement that you must have started. And I understand why, because of course you'd want to invest in a student who is already committed and dedicated to his or her studies, rightly so. But for somebody who does not have the financial means to even start, how are you guaranteed to get one university graduate per household from that household where, there's just a scarcity of financial resources?
I like when journalists have a long question for you because they normally answer during the asking of that question. The fact of the matter is we have different strategies for ensuring that we have one university graduate per household. With the UniPass grant, let me make sure we explain that. The UniPass grant is for individuals who have gotten accepted, they've started university, they may be working, or they may have gotten some finances to start university and then stumble upon hard times. Hence the reason why the grant is for individuals who are in their last few years trying to complete. So what government would do now is take into consideration your grades, how you're doing, and what your financial situation is at the time, and provide you with assistance in completing your degree. And I think that is amazing because at the end of the day, a lot of us start and then we get, somebody might have a child, somebody might lose their job and that sort of thing. So that particular aspect of the service we are rendering is targeted at these individuals. Now you have the first generation scholarship where from day one, you are given a full scholarship. 75 individuals will be receiving that scholarship in the next few weeks to do the entire program. And then you still have the economic cost from UWI. So if we're helping those that are struggling, we're helping those that are starting, and we're helping those that are finishing, what else? We have, as a government, tried to strategize how we're going to get as many young people educated as possible. I think the UniPass grant, it works. It doesn't help everybody, but it is something that we can use for our young people.
Between the Ministry of Education and Monroe University?
Absolutely. Government of St. Lucia,
Right.
Government of St. Lucia, and Monroe University.
How does that program cater to a student who wants to pursue something that Monroe is not offering? For example, communications.
All right. Every single university in the world have a course catalog with what they offer. Every single university. There is no university that would offer everything. So if the student wants to study communication, then that student can apply for a communication program at another university.
But then they will not get the financial assistance that they need.
No, but it sounds as if you believe the government can do every single thing. It's not. It's not a.
Just a genuine question.
Okay, I'm giving you a genuine answer. Monroe University, they have a list of courses that they offer to the people of St. Lucia. Government of St. Lucia, Monroe University, they have arrangements to ensure that 75 individuals, they are able to be catered for their 4-year program, the degree. There's no university with all programs, so Monroe University would not have all programs. I'd advise anybody who wants to study communication, which is what I did, to apply to another university, whether online or in a long-term program, get accepted at the university, and find a way, write to the ministry to see if they can get financial support towards completing their program. Work with private sponsors, work with other individuals so that they can finish their degree. But there is just no way, it would never be possible for all subjects to have been taught by Monroe and that all individuals could get access to Monroe University. It just does not happen. 1 second. That's it? Oh, you have a question? Yeah.
All right. Good afternoon. Piggybacking off of the scholarship opportunities provided for students, one of the issues St. Lucia has faced over the years would be that of brain drain, where obviously, so we educate our young people, but we're not able to employ them, nor are we able to harness their skills for national development. So what strategy does the ministry have to harvest and harness the skills and the education of the young people whom we've educated overseas?
It's a very good question. And as Minister of Education, that was one of the issues I raised very early with my technocrats, because we do have that situation in St. Lucia. There is a reason why we have a government priority list. We also encourage young people to consult the government priority list, which would tell you what are the skills we absolutely need on this island and we are willing to fund by way of education. So that list would tell you that we don't need lawyers, specifically in St. Lucia. We have so many lawyers. So if you, as an individual, decide on your own that you're going to study law, it's because you're betting on yourself to be better than the already saturated market of lawyers in St. Lucia. That's you as an individual deciding that. If we tell you, for instance, we have probably about 2,000 business managers in St. Lucia, and so that is not an area of priority. If you decide as a young person to study business management, it's because you back in yourself to be a better business manager than all what that currently exists in St. Lucia. So we do have a government priority list so that individuals could see the list of let's just say technical skills that are needed in country that is not available right now. The fact of the matter is you do want individuals to study what they believe is within their purview to study and the skills being harnessed and that sort of thing. As a minister, my duty is to ensure that there's a more equitable space on a global market for our skills that are coming back in St. Lucia. So creating that symbiotic relationship with some of the biggest companies, the biggest organizations, the global funds, to ensure that when young people come back in St. Lucia and they do have a degree in a particular skill, that they don't look at only St. Lucia as being a possible place for them to work, but they can get some form of employment somewhere in the region as opposed to coming back with a degree and sitting home and being unemployed. I think at the end of the day, that is something that is very much needed because we do have so many individuals graduating from St. Lucia. We're blessed with a high level of intellect in our young people. And so these are one of the things that we believe that we need to do so that this brain drain sort of syndrome is something that we can fight against.
But also, we have to somehow come to terms with a reality that many will not want to work in St. Lucia at all, and so I recall, at least during the budget presentations of this year, your government would have outlined, let's say, a broader shift of, let's say, harnessing the financial resources of St. Lucians in the diaspora. So how would the Ministry of Education partner with, students who have graduated, who are working overseas, and now the ministry, the Department of Diaspora Affairs, to now, let's say, if it is that they may be paying taxes while working overseas to St. Lucia, but in any case, harnessing their financial resources for the development of St. Lucia?
Let me put it this way. As young people in St. Lucia, I believe we need to be very strategic and we need to be advised on how we structure our careers. We have a lot of young people that believe that the second you get a degree with very little experience, that you're entitled to $6,000 at the end of the month because you have a degree. The reality is it just does not work that way. I always advise young people to, just as I was asked earlier, to make yourself as marketable as possible, to make it more, to increase the chances of you getting those opportunities. So I ask individuals to volunteer. I ask individuals to network. I ask individuals to be part of community organizations that can actually get you connected with the rest of the world so that you get not just your academia, but the experience on ground and the networks to actually give you opportunities, whether it is here or abroad. The reality is we will not be able to deal with brain drain in just 1 year or 2 years. It is something that has to be strategized, that we see what our competencies are, what our individual students are gravitating towards, what academic levels that they are bringing in, and find a way, whether it's through diaspora affairs, to fit them into what we're doing. Here's the reality. All of our research is showing that we need more technical skills in terms of TVET education in St. Lucia, more plumbers, more electricians, more individuals that are into woodwork technology and carpentry and joinery. That is the information that we are garnering. So once we have that information, we can encourage young people. That is why we have the TVET institutes opened up. That is why we are making these opportunities available to them. And we will be announcing another opportunity very soon for young people in TVET. That is why we create all of these opportunities for our people to gain employment. Will we still have individuals coming home with certain degrees and not getting work? Yes, that is a fact, that is a reality. But we as a government, we continue to encourage people to be as broad-based as possible so that it can increase the chances of them getting some form of employment for themselves and family.
Okay, well, lastly from me, so separate and apart from students who are dedicated to TVET and the others who might want to further tertiary education, I noticed that your ministry is, particularly youth development and sports, focusing on skills development among young people. Would you make now a call to more young people to develop their professional and personal skills so that even if, let's say, you might work at a retailer, you're still more marketable, you can do, I don't know, CPR or stuff like that?
I'll say this again. For me as a minister, what has worked for me, in fact, as an individual, what has worked for me is being as broad as possible, not being this just one-track minded individual that just believes in academia and only academia is going to take me through. I think connecting, skilling and reskilling, learning, the use of different technologies that are available, AI, instead of being afraid of it, gravitating towards it to see how it could be useful to you and your career. These are some of the things I would recommend to young people because we are living in a changing global environment and it's going to be even more dynamic over the next couple of years. So skilling, reskilling, from time to time, getting experience in some jobs that we don't even want can come back to help you as an individual as you move up in your career. Yeah, last question? Yes.
My name is Phoebe Popo from Choice Media Network. Regarding the CAC Games, I heard you mention the different athletes and the Commonwealth Games. I heard you mention that you attended, but sadly, I did not hear any feedback on the weightlifters. who performed, and they performed really well. As a passionate weightlifter myself, and the two other young women, which is very important, young women who went and they represented St. Lucia, what is your feedback? How is the ministry preparing to support these young weightlifters in that sport?
Okay, so the Ministry of Youth Development and Sport we've had a number of challenges over the year in terms of the whole ideology of we being, so there are different sort of thinking as it pertains to sports development. Some people, the school of thought would be focus on what you're best at. So you would have the belief that St. Lucia has been doing well in cricket, track and field, they've been doing well in, let's say, volleyball, they've been doing very well. So you focus most of your attention and finances on these sports, and then you augment some of your efforts on the other sports. So there is that theory. We've had previous governments who've actually mentioned that this is the way to develop small island sports. And then you have another school of thought, which is no sport left behind, which means you have an alternative sports sector at the ministry for individuals that are not into running, not into jumping and shooting the basketball hoop, but they're into chess, they're into car racing, they're into different things, weightlifting, mountain biking, those sports that are not, traditional in St. Lucia, to say they are on the scale of football and track and field, and these are the two schools of thought. For me, as Minister of Sport, I wouldn't want to see any sport left behind. The reality is, with that approach, you need a lot of financing. You need to be able to give weightlifters, which is one of the more expensive sports, because you have to do supplementation, you have to do gym, you have to do a lot of time investment in that. You'd have to be able to give them the requisite attention financially that is needed. And that is the challenge. The challenge is we have all of these different sporting activities, and we as a nation, we are doing well in most of them, and it requires us now to acquire additional financing towards it. Me as minister, we continue to work towards ensuring that we have those finances. We have within our last manifesto the creation of a weightlifting gym for St. Lucia, a national weightlifting gym. So I can tell you that signals to weightlifters that this government is serious about their plight. It is expensive because you need some real technical, esoteric sort of equipment for that sport. And so we're expecting that at the end of the day, that very soon they will be given that required level of attention that we know they deserve. Yes.
No. Something of a perennial issue. And if you would have browsed through the local paper over the weekend, you would have seen
I was not in the weekend, I got back last night.
the weekend paper. It does not diminish the fact that it is there. The paper is there. There is the issue of sports versus carnival. We've discussed that before. It has come up before. It will always come up again. The fact of the matter is, in the paper, you would have realized that the issue stems back over 40 years.
Why I feel like I answer that question every 2 months?
Well, it's a question that would have been answered 40 years ago and continually for 40 years. Why would you think that it would not be asked again? It's an issue that has come up every carnival. And the issue has everything to do with venues for carnival as opposed to sporting venues utilized for carnival.
What's the question?
Oh, you don't know the question? All right.
Because
The question is,
I want to make sure that is the same question being asked again.
yes, the question is, why after 40 years we're still dealing with this issue?
Okay, we're dealing with this issue because we are a small island. We're dealing with this issue because we do not have unlimited resources. We're dealing with this issue because we've not identified finances to have, let's just say, 10 venues for activities, like carnival activities spread around, because Soufriere has the cultural, social carnival activities, ancillary cultural, social carnival activities grossly. So you're dealing with a country that has to find a way to balance the use of facilities in the absence of the notion that sports activities are for sportsmen and women, and that carnival activities should be slated for individuals that are into the culture, creative industry, and that sort of thing. So for me, we have not come to a point where, or have not satisfied me as a minister, where we've understood that immediately after an event is held, a social carnival event is held, that the following day requires us to do everything to get the facility back in the hands of the sportsmen and women in St. Lucia. Until all and sundry understands that we all need to place effort into ensuring that instantaneously that the facility is placed back in the hands or available to young people instantaneously. Until we don't understand that, we'll continue to ask that question over and over. And you'll continue to hear the Minister of Sport say he don't want any carnival activities on the field because, and I've been brutalized for it, but I've said over and over again that all of us need to understand that we need to be more responsible in how we use our facilities. We need to be more considerate of sportsmen and women and the plight and them being off the blocks to ensure that we return the facilities to them immediately. Every single year, I have to ask for that to happen immediately.
Is it safe to say, or can we say, that the reason why this is not resolved is because we're not committed to resolving it?
I think
and bearing in mind also that the facilities are never returned immediately. It sometimes takes months.
Me and you are saying the same thing. We are saying the same thing. I, Kenson Kazmi, as Minister of Sport, would prefer for us to have the sports facilities available every single day for young men and women to improve on their skills. That is my desire. But as you've heard from other ministers, you've heard from individuals who've opined on this very subject over and over, it's a small island with very limited facilities for both activities happening separately. And so we need to coexist. My question and my response is, let's be serious about the coexistence. Let's be serious and let's commit to immediately doing all that we need to do for the following week or the following day to have meaningful sporting activities happen. The fact of the matter is it has not. And I'm going to continue to express my concern on this. I'm going to continue to express my desire that we, at the end of the day, continue to make sportsmen and women, in fact, everybody as a stakeholder needs to be given their level of attention, but more has to be done to bring the facilities back to the level that it was found before the activities were held. Yeah? Thank you all. Water.
We will be right back on this live stream.
Ça, c'est pour toute cette dossier qui n'est un case qui a pris 3 ans. This courthouse was established especially to deal with the backlog of criminal cases in the court system. The court has already started operating and is already yielding results with over 30 cases being disposed so far.
I am informed that of the 138 or the 1,138 cases pending as of the 31st of March 2026, 587 of them, 51.6%, have been there for over 6 years. By any measure, this is unacceptable and justifies the saying that justice delayed is justice denied. The administrators of justice will have many reasons for this deficiency in our system. This mounting backlog of cases has been a pressing issue for my administration since assuming office in July 2021. This morning, I'm pleased to say that this long-standing issue is now being addressed following my administration's early declared intention and commitment to do so. So I'm very happy that we can sort this thing out. I'm very, very, very pleased. It's been the government's commitment to deal with the justice system. And I can tell you, we've made tremendous investment in citizen security in this country. Tremendous investment. What's happening at Bordelais? Doing work at Bordelais. Tremendous investment. And very soon, we're going to be opening, or going to be beginning the construction at the former George Charles Secondary School. We're going to be beginning the construction of young men who have issues with the law. Something which will be different from a prison, but we'll have where young men will be able to get some rehabilitation. That's going to be pronounced next month. And as I declare officially open this court, I want to remind you of the insightful words of the civil rights leader, Martin Luther King Jr. And he said, "True peace is not merely the absence of tension, it's the presence of justice." I thank you.
Say bye.
We salute you. The government salutes you. We hope that the integrity and the commitment and the professionalism of members of the fire service, the Bordelais Correctional Institution, and the police force remains at the highest level. We will do our best to improve your conditions of work and to make life more bearable for you. Rest assured that you are important, you're very important, and maintain your dignity and your integrity. I thank you very much.
Today's contract signing marks the continuation of the Northern Pipeline project. For this significant national investment, we are finally rehabilitating the severely corroded transmission line. We must embrace life. So protecting the lifeblood of St. Lucia is exactly why we are gathered here this morning. For decades, the arteries of our national water network have been under immense pressure. When we look at the Northern Pipeline, we are looking at infrastructure that was installed over 40 years ago, laid down in an incredibly aggressive environment. The data speaks for itself. 43 to 50% thereabouts of our water is non-revenue. That is nearly half of the water we painstakingly produce that is bleeding into the ground for these aging pipes before it ever reaches a single tap.
For the last 12 months, the government has invested $1.2 million in Wasco every month. Something not known by many people. And incidentally, these funds have come from the CIP program. And I can possibly say it's the first time that any government has paid up its Wasco's bills. In fact, we've paid these bills sometimes in advance. So I want to say to Wasco, we are watching you, we're keeping a close eye on you, because as I said before, in finances, we are the ones who rule.
Our next speaker is Prime Minister Philip J. Pierre. He will give you a couple of updates, and then, of course, he will take your questions right afterwards. Prime Minister.
Thank you very much. Good afternoon, members of the press. I'm back from my 5-day vacation. The last time I saw my doctor, I was fit and healthy. So I feel refreshed and ready to continue what is happening in this country. I just want to clarify something that you've been hearing all over about audits for the St. Lucia Social Development Fund. The leader of the opposition has written several organizations, several embassies, several foreign governments, locally and internationally, including the Caribbean Development Bank, proclaiming that there's been no audits of the St. Lucia Social Development Fund since the Labour Party is in power. I want to tell you, this is a falsity of the highest order. Let me tell you the facts. Let us deal with it in terms of years. You must have got copies of the letter from the leader of the opposition, and he claims that no audits have been done or no reports have been given on the St. Lucia Social Development Fund. You may recall that Alan Chasney was Prime Minister from the year 20, and I want you to take these dates correctly, take them down, from the year 2016 to 2021. And I want you to correct me if I'm wrong. The last audit, listen carefully, please. 2016 to 2021, the then leader of the opposition was Minister of Finance. The last audit for the St. Lucia Social Development Fund was done for the years 2017 and 2018. These audits were done in March 2023. These audits were done in March 2023. And the St. Lucia Labour Party, we were the party in power at that time. Now, let me tell you further. Upon assuming office, the current board of directors initiated the process of auditing the financial statements of the St. Lucia Social Development Fund, recognizing the importance of ensuring that financial records were necessary. The process initially focused on clearing the outstanding audits for the financial year, for the financial period 2016 to 2021 under the United Workers' Party government. The audit for the financial years 2016 to 2017 and 2017 to 2018 has since been completed under the administration of the current board of directors. As part of its efforts to address the outstanding financial statements, the board encountered challenges in obtaining the necessary supporting documents for the subsequent financial years, 2017 to 2018, 2018 to 2019, 2019 to 2020, and 2020 to 2021, all under the governance of the United Workers' Party. No audits were performed, none. Following extensive discussions with the auditors, the board reached a mutual agreement to proceed with the preparation of the outstanding financial statements as qualified statements. And the leader of the opposition will be advised what a qualified statement means. I will try to give it to you in layman terms after. This approach allows the SSDF to address the outstanding years and advance the auditing process despite the documentation challenges encountered. The SSDF is now looking ahead and is pleased to advise that the auditors have committed to delivering unqualified audited statements, that is, once the records are there, for the financial years 2022, 2023, 2023, 2024, 2024, 2025, and 2025. The board is working closely with the auditors who have been appointed with the objective of having these statements finalized by the end of 2026. So the only reason why statements have not been prepared is because the United Workers' Party, under the present leader of the opposition, failed to present audited statements for these years. And the years that were presented were years 2016, when they took over the SSDF from the St. Lucia Labour Party. And all the years before that, audited statements on the Labour Party were prepared. I know it's very difficult to believe that. I see you closing your eye. I found it incredible myself. Honestly, I know that some politicians distort facts, but that one was incredible. To make it worse, I have copies of the financial statements that are prepared for the years ended 2017 and the year ended 2018. I have copies. They were prepared in 2023. So, all during the tenure of the present leader of the opposition, as Minister of Finance, he has not prepared one set of financial statements for the SSDF. Not one. And this same leader of the opposition, in his quest to damage St. Lucia, has written the entire world accusing us of not preparing financial statements. When he, in his tenure, he never prepared one. Because of the paucity of records and because the auditors could not get the proper documentation to prepare financial statements. So we have agreed now with the auditors, the SSDF, not us, not me, that they will push ahead using these qualified financial statements and go forward for the years upcoming. So, the entire world has been told that my government failed to prepare audited financial statements. I will now have to write, which you see, when people do that, perform in that way, it damages the country. Because here you have a gentleman who was leader of a country writing a falsity when he himself, who was Minister of Finance for 5 years, never prepared financial statements, never. These statements had been prepared by us in 2023 for his years. So, gentlemen and lady, I just want you to understand what we are dealing with in this country. And I can make the statements available for you to see the years and to see when they were prepared. We have employed auditors, and these auditors are going to move forward with the rest of the years because they could not go forward because of the paucity of records that we inherited in 2016. Inherited. When they go into government, in 2016, the years before, 2015, 2014, 2013, statements have been prepared. When we inherited them, so in 2021, the paucity of records going forward, from 2016 going forward, was so bad, the statements could not be prepared. So they had to go into an arrangement with the auditors to move forward. And then we did 2017, which is the year after we got into government, which is the year after they got into government, but we did the audit. And the year 18, when they were in government, and we did the audit. I know, and that's incredible, eh? That's incredible. That's incredible. But I'm not sure if it's a lapse of memory. And if it's a lapse of memory, it may be a lapse of memory, I don't know. But to have forgotten that and put on record and sign it is way beyond my imagination. Having said so, as I said before, I await the report of the police. I have not engaged myself in any way in the discussions or the investigation by the police. I await the police report. When the police report is received, when the police make their statement, then as leader of the cabinet, I will make my own decisions based on my role as leader of the cabinet. In the meantime, I await the investigation being done by the police. in which I have absolutely no say. Meanwhile, the SSDF has just completed a STEP program, as you note that. And incidentally, you will hear a similar story for the National Economic Fund. You'll hear a similar story. You'll hear it, a similar story. The SSDF has just completed. Further, the leader of the opposition wrote the Caribbean Development Bank. That's the bank that funds the Basic Needs Trust Fund. And I have been informed by the St. Lucia Social Development Fund that reports have gone every year to the Caribbean Development Bank on the Basic Needs Trust Fund. That is why they give the money back. That's why they refinance it every year. And I'm also been told that the St. Lucia Social Development Fund board receives a report from management every year on the activities of the SSDF and also the Taiwanese government that the leader of the opposition wrote, and how a defeated candidate caused herself to find herself at somebody who lost elections, a loser, under the auspices of some body, some group, found herself at the Taiwanese ambassador's office in full view of the world and handed her a letter, or I don't know what she handed her to the honorable ambassador, after the leader of the opposition had written a letter. Let me inform you that any donation that has been given by the Taiwanese, they've got a full report on how the money was spent. A full report. There is a proposal and then there's a report. And the Taiwanese can vouch, but ambassadors do not get involved in that kind of activity in local politics. They can vouch, they've got the reports. Anyone who has contributed to SSDF has got a report on how the money was used. And the only reason why there's not an audit report, because the United Progressive Party failed in their 5 years. And due to the paucity of the records, we could not move forward. But now, this arrangement, we are moving forward. That is the SSDF story. So it's very sad for political reasons to damage the good name of the country that the leader of the opposition go in public view and put his signature on what he knows very well is untrue. And what he knows very well he did not do when he was Minister of Finance. The last statements, 2017, 2018, were done in March 2023. And the leader of the opposition was Minister of Finance from 2016 to 2021. The last set of statements were given in March 2023. And I have copies I can make available to you. Any questions?
The first issue that jumps out is the issue of the lack of documentation. One would have expected that an organization like SSDF running through amazing amounts of finances would have documentation up, as you would say, up the wazoo. How is it that auditors now are finding out that you're unable to carry forward their work because of a lack of documentation?
That's a question that you may have to ask the auditors themselves. I don't think they will answer that question because this is a confidential. You see, you expect a certain standard from people who seek political office, right? You expect them to be honorable men and women. And you don't expect that if there was a lapse, as there was an obvious lapse from the last government as far as SSDF documentation was concerned, you don't expect them to go into the open and make these statements. I take something further. And you know, I've tried my best to keep quiet and to protect this country because I know what the SSDF means to the underserved people of this country. I know what it means to them. The SSDF is a merger of the St. Lucia Poverty Reduction Fund and the Basic Needs Trust Fund. It's a merger. And if you look at what it was created to do, is to help the underserved to reduce poverty. And I'm very, 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 very conscious of the role of the SSDF because that's what our party is all about. It's about assisting people at the grassroots level. And the work that the SSDF has done, there are reports to show right now the SSDF is involved in a program called the Boys to Men program. It's involved in a program for offenders, first offenders. It's involved in a program to stop young people who are in conflict with the law from getting involved in serious law, in serious issues. The SSDF is a very important organization, and we should tread very carefully in that. I'll tell you something. In 2021, I, as Minister of Finance, mandated a report on the SSDF, which I have not released. You may tell me why. I was not in government. I was not in government I was not in government between 2016 and 2021. So it could not have affected me. I did not release it because of the way I take the role of the SSDF so seriously. Because I know that organizations like the SSDF, it's not very easy for them to get funding. I know that. Because they are social institutions. And the IFCs, some of them, are not very keen to fund social institutions. I have a copy of this audit report. An audit report on specific things. I have it. I've not released it because of my sensitivity towards the work of the SSDF and almost not to expose what happened. What happened in 2021, 2020? I have the records. You must have heard about a project called Synergy. We can go on there, you know. But my job is the politics is over. You see, Ryan, let me listen. I'm a true Democrat. I believe in the will of the people. I believe in people. I think the people elect governments, and the people select governments. When you're in opposition, you have to fight, but you cannot try to destroy the country. You should not try to destroy it, because it's a country that you may want to govern. So I have the report. I can show it to you. I have not. It calls people's names. It calls constituencies. It's there. It's there. You know, many people shout, oh, you talk about corruption and talk about, you know, I have a country to run. And what's important to me is that the children have to get their CXC paid. I want every household to have a university graduate. I want every household to have running water. Next week, we're going to be signing a contract for social housing. That's what's important to me. What's important to me is not having the calling of prime minister. That's a temporary job. I've said so many times. It's a temporary job. But when I leave, the people will remain. And this is why I just allow a lot of things to go by, which I can defend. You have documentation. I mean, government, there's documentation. I can show you.
Two things, Mr. If the report of 2020-21 is damning, there may be issues of criminality. So a withholding of that document may very well be not something to do. But also, in the final analysis, there is damage that would have been done, obviously, by the letter coming from the opposition leader.
There was damage.
How bad do you think it is?
There was damage up to we had some people in the U.S. and then they commented on St. Lucia's political situation, which is a complete fabrication. There's no crushing of democracy in St. Lucia. Could you write anything? Have I ever called any of you in this room and say what to write? I've never done that. Some of it, I don't like it. Some of it I think is unfair, but that's your job. And some of it I think, wow. But when you write, when you go and tell people overseas that St. Lucia has suppression of the press, people can't speak, you realize the things that they write about us on Facebook? You think we don't know who writes it? Sometimes one person, just writes in different names. One person. You see, the technology is available, you understand? But we don't, because I have a greater purpose. Because my job is a temporary job. But you're right. There may be issues. I can show you. Let me tell you something how the SSDF works under my administration. And I tell you again, there's a criminal investigation going on. Let the investigation run its course. I will protect no wrongdoing. I've said to the public, I've told my ministers that I will protect no wrongdoing. Once there is proof. Now, there's a difference between illegality and immorality. Two different things. Your moral compass, your behavior morally is a matter of you, God, and the person you're involved with. But your ethical behavior and your behavior in terms of government is a different thing, which I can measure. But as I always say, and I want to quote the late Sir John, who is without sin cast the first stone. So when people raise their hands with great moral authority and raise their hands up as the bastions of morality and the bastions of good order and good behavior, just look a little bit behind. Look behind. But there's a statement that I called for you, Baldus is romantic. Listen to the tape. Listen to what I said. I have never, on any political platform, ever questioned anybody's moral behavior, their sexual preferences. No, I don't. I've never. And on the record, I challenged you the other day, you never came back to the challenge, to tell me in the last campaign whether you ever heard me mention the leader of the opposition's name. I challenge you. Nobody could find it. Like I never did it. So when you see this start on that charade about Pierre, it doesn't really bother me because I know the truth and I know myself. I've never challenged anybody's morality. I don't behave like that. That's you, your God, and yourself. I don't do it. So that is why I've not gotten involved in that. Because you see, what is happening is that that thing has been turned into a political circus for political gain. I repeat myself again. Suran, you're very correct. But I always look at the bigger picture. I look at the protection of St. Lucia. Because, I tell you something, if these foreign entities do not have any confidence in our government and the government that we run. What is happening now? The way investors, yesterday we opened a massive restaurant in Grosili. Investor. Investors are Roddy B. Investors are knocking at the door. They want to invest in St. Lucia. St. Lucia has never had more investment than it had over the last 5 or 6 years. Check it out. Check it out. Look for yourself about it. Every day, people come to us to go design finance contracts. Look at the projects that we are delivering. That's what interests me. The Grosili Polyclinic. We're going to be delivering that very shortly. The extension. That's what interests me. We hear their complaints about the Grosili Polyclinic as it exists. We accept these complaints. That's why we're doing the extension. Right now, very shortly, tenders are going to be going out to spend the emergency services at the Winston Parish Medical Complex. The emergency services there are going to be improved. That's what interests me. The St. Jude Hospital, we started the dialysis machine. Some people wanted a fire to catch there. We started the dialysis center is going on. Work is going on there. We want to get for the people of St. Lucia. The extension of the OKU hospital. We want to get that fifth finger going. The schools. If you go to the Enchibo school, you see a brand new building is being completed. 6 other secondary schools are being completed. We're going to pay for the first time 5 CXC subjects for the students going to school. We have an education program that we're going to spend almost $3 million on education support for children going to school. And by the way, the leader of the opposition got his allocation. Very contrary, when I was in opposition, the leader of the opposition got his allocation for educational support for the students of Microsoft. Because you don't want the students of Microsoft to suffer. He got his allocation. He got his allocation for the STEP program. He got his allocation from the same SSDF that he wants to destroy. He got his allocation. So we're not going this personal attacks and these things. These are things that are reality, things you can check. And the people who have all the commentaries must look at these things. He got his allocation. His education, I won't tell you how much, but he got it. Which, at his total discretion, he can, like any other parliamentary rep. Like any parliamentary rep. The leader of the opposition gets his allocation under the CDB project. And you may note that the letter that the lady gave to the Taiwanese government spoke about the CDB project. You want to tell me that lady wants to go back in it? You remember a fellow called Mr. Chu? Tom Chu? You want to tell me they want to go back in that history? Let me tell you something categorically. There is no minister who has any checkbook from the SSDF in his pocket. No minister. I can say that's so. There is no minister in my government who has ever had any SSDF checkbook in his hand. No minister. There is no minister in my government who's had an SSDF checkbook in his hand to distribute checks. None. The same criteria that is used for parliamentarians. And I'm in the process of refining it. Because the SSDF is too important, Rand. The SSDF is not a ministry, you know. It's a governmental institution that deals with social benefits. When you damage that, you damage the social fabric that serves the underserved, and that's what you damage. It's hurtful. If a minister has transgressed, we'll deal with it. Let's deal with it. But don't bring the whole organization into dispute. The entire organization to a point of line on paper. It's not right. It's not right. Go ahead.
So was there a minister with a SSDF checkbook?
Let me say it again. I can tell you categorically that under my administration, there's been no minister with an SSDF checkbook. How can I go into the future, in the past? Yes.
Prime Minister, hold on a second. Since we live streaming, there are some questions from the public. There's a user called Cranberry Ace who wants to know, how can we repair the damage caused by the leader of the opposition's reckless actions?
Well, I always believe in, it's not me, you know, the people repair the damage. You see, the good thing of us is we report to people. And that's what I've always held. So when I get criticized all the time on the radio and things, so I always say, go back to the people. That's my only defense. My defense is not commentary, you know. My defense is not commentary. My defense is anytime I put myself before the people have responded. And that's all I defend myself with. They may look for reasons why I have won. Reasons, all kind of reasons. Money, things like that. That's expected. People say what they want. But the damage that's done to this country will be corrected by the people of the country. That's my response. Because I believe in the people. It's the people put us where we are. The people. Through the system of first past the post. You go in, they give you a little piece of paper, you show ID card, you put an X and drop it in the box. And they count everything when they month. Some of them get 4 votes. Yes.
Good afternoon, Prime Minister.
Good afternoon.
You seem to be very passionate about the deterrence of reckless driving in St. Lucia.
Oh, you've changed topic. Let's finish with SSDF and come back to that. Like for some people have SSDF questions.
Anybody
Is that
else has SSDF question?
Is there? I know you had a. I know you said you had done a report or asked for a report in 2021, but given to what you've just revealed about that 5-year period, and you also spoke about one of the economic funds, do you see merit in looking closely at these entities in terms of, well, for that 5-year span, there was no financial account. So do you now see a merit in looking closely at these organizations and what goes on in there?
Well, that's a good question. There always is place for reform, for review, for re-engineering, for looking at things differently. There's always, nothing is perfect. We are looking at these processes. We are looking at processes, and we refine it as time goes. Like, let me give an example. Now, anyone who gets a contract for less than, I think, $6,000, he has to have a written contract. Anybody, a written contract. Now, all contracts must have a picture of an ID card. All forms of assistance must have an invoice from the... So supposing you come and say you want some assistance for medical situation, you have to have an invoice from the medical institution. So we refine these processes all the time. We refine them. And that's how we had new rules of engagement. All the time, these rules of engagement are fine-tuned because we're in a state of constantly trying to improve our situation. So you're correct. We're not perfect. There are loopholes in some of the systems. In any system, there are loopholes, but we are in the process of refining. So you're very correct. We are looking at refining them. But why is we doing that? We don't want to damage. We don't want to burn the house to kill a rat. Yes. Any more SSDF?
Yes.
You?
Okay, so you've spoken about what the opposition or the operatives have done in terms of writing letters and so on.
No. The letters are written by the leader of the opposition.
Yes. So is there any way, since you've expressed how important the SSDF is to St. Lucia, is there any way that both political parties can sit together and perhaps draft an agreement of let's say conduct, right? So even if you're in opposition, you will not
do political parties.
Well, yes, but to manage the conduct of politicians.
Well, that exists. There's integrity. There's integrity in the Integrity Commission. There's integrity. all this is, all what the leader of the opposition is saying, you could just tell him in Parliament and ask a question, If it wasn't the need to create mischief and to spoil St. Lucia's good name, he could stand, the leader of the opposition writes the Director of Finance. The Director of Finance doesn't report to the minister, the leader of the opposition. The Director of Finance reports to the Minister of Finance. The leader of the opposition has the Public Accounts Committee. That's what he reports to him. Not the Director of Finance. When you take a young man who's just beginning his life in public life, in public service, and you damage his name, call his name out, your surrogates put his picture on social media. What are you doing to a young man? What are you saying to other young St. Lucians who want to make their contribution to this country? The Director of Finance doesn't report to the leader of the opposition. The leader of the opposition reports to the Public Accounts Committee. The leader of the opposition can stand up in Parliament and ask any question he wants. That's his role. To stand, but that's not the object. The object is to destroy. So you take a young man, you take a professional who's worked at the Eastern Caribbean Central Bank, who is a renowned young professional growing, and you damage his name. So what happens to other people who want to come and work in St. Lucia? What happens to them? What message are you sending to you young people who are at universities? What you send a message? Damage the poor man's name. You call his name out. You single him out. And to make it worse, he's not even chairman of the SSDF, He's not even chairman of the SSDF. But he's the target that you go after. You know why? That is to frighten civil servants, to instill fear in their hearts, so they can't do their work. That's why. That's the only objective. Not for the truth. The objective is to instill fear. I'll get you. Revenge. That is the reason why. It's not a quest for truth, but a simple phone call. The leader of the opposition could stand in Parliament and say, Mr. Speaker, I have a question. Why and when was the last audit for the SSDF performed? He'll get all the answers. But no, he has to write the Taiwanese. He has to write the Americans. He has to write the British. He has to write the Caribbean Development Bank. He has to write to damage St. Lucia's name. Not a quest for truth. And I will not be part of that. I will never damage St. Lucia's name. Because I know when I'm gone, St. Lucia has been managed. So when you attack the Director of Finance, you attack all young professionals who are doing their job. The leader of the opposition in a letter accused auditors, He goes in a completely different direction and says that he wants another body to appoint auditors. You don't know how auditors take their role seriously. Auditors can be sued. Auditors give opinions on financial statements. And when they're in doubt, they qualify these financial statements. They say, we cannot verify these figures. That's a profession. They have a charter. They have a code of ethics under which they work. But he writes a letter and asks that they be appointed differently. That means he has no confidence. And to tell you the truth, just look and see who has been appointed as auditors. But in his own mind, he in his own mind, imputing improper motives, he thought he knew who was appointed as auditors or who would be appointed as auditors. So he took what he thought was a preemptive strike, not knowing that the same auditors he left are the same auditors that are here still. But he took up. So then he imposed the name of these auditors. He's attacked them by his letter. Written words, he's going to speak about accent better than me. But his written words that are there for everybody to see, he's attacked the integrity of auditors and accountants. And these are the same people who he left when he left government. That we never changed. Same people. He attacks them. And he asked for the Auditor General. The Auditor General, Director Audit, is also an accountant. So indirectly, he has attacked her. Indirectly, he has attacked her because he's asking for special treatment of auditors. Somebody else must work on the auditors. So he's attacked the Auditor General, who is asking to supervise somebody that he's attacked. You know, I don't know if you've seen young members of press, if you've seen what I'm saying, you know. And if you look at the difference and the damage that's been done to this country. The Auditor General, he wants to look at it, he's attacked her because she herself is an auditor. And read the letter for yourself. You got a copy of the letter?
I don't think the one you received we can share it.
You can share it if you want. Yes.
Good afternoon, Prime Minister. Just one small question is in regards to SSDF. We've now seen the leader of opposition when he was in power who has failed to actually release the audit reports. Prepare the audit reports. Is there any regulations or any laws within that country that says if a government who has failed to prepare audit reports, is there anything that's going to be happening?
As I said to you, you can't legislate everything. I've made that point several times before. You cannot legislate everything, right? You can't legislate everything. There are no specific penalties relating to that, but you expect to be honorable and to speak the truth. Same thing with Deputy Speaker. We expect people to behave in an honorable fashion, but there are no laws as such that say that. Yes, SSDF.
All the people that the leader of the opposition wrote to, do they now know the truth?
I'll have to tell them. That's it, SSDF. I'm afraid I want to.
Prime Minister, onto the issue of reckless driving, I was saying that you seem very passionate about the deterrence of reckless driving in St. Lucia. But how does that passion replicate to tangible investments in road infrastructure, railings, barriers, etc.?
Very good question. First of all, there's personal responsibility. And that is what we seem to be missing all the time. Personal responsibility. Right? And whereas we do all the... Have you noticed the amount of barriers that have been mashed up? People driving them, you know. They mash it up, they're driving them. I mean, you have to be realistic. I mean, we say things that sound, but I'm not saying you. When it comes to attacking governments, we find it very easy to attack governments. Put barriers, put lights with it. Have you seen the number of barriers? Go to Sanssouci, just by the SAB. There's a barrier there, you know. You see where it is? A vehicle had gone there, you know. Go drive. Drive in the Calvary. Drive on the Calvary. The barriers there, you know. The fellas enter them. So I agree there's need for more barriers. If you notice, the Minister of Infrastructure started remarking of the Grocery Highway. You notice that? Right. All the new roads that we've built, they've been marked. The Chaussee Road was marked. The new roads have been marked. But we need to have more barriers, but we also need to deal with personal responsibility. But we're going to be embarking on, if you notice, the bollards on the highway have been replaced, right? These things are soft measures that we're taking. But the main measure is personal responsibility of the drivers who use our roads. But we are going to be increasing our soft measures, road marking, barriers, etc.
Good afternoon. My name is Phoebe Popo from Choice Media Network. So the first question is, as National Security Minister, what impact do you think Spain's removal of a visa requirement for St. Lucian travelers will have on St. Lucians traveling to Europe, especially as a means of connecting with other destinations throughout the world?
I knew that most of the time people connect with London. With Spain, I don't know, but we never like to lose visas. But Mr. Lucian is ready to go to Spain. It's not a happy thing. I mean, I'm not happy, but again, we make that point all the time. Every country has a right to have its own immigration policy. Every country. And further, this immigration policy is a policy that seems to be very prevalent in Europe for many, many reasons. St. Lucia happens to be caught in that trap. But it's something that happens in many countries in Europe. All countries are tightening on immigration. They're tightening immigration. We're not happy, but it's a fact, and we cannot control any government's internal policies.
My second question, as Finance Minister, what outcomes came from the Quota General Assembly and Technical Conference? Can we expect any impact on voluntary tax compliance and general revenue collection in St. Lucia?
Oh yeah, I have. That's a very good question. As you know, we have a very generous tax amnesty, and I must say that we are starting to get some results from that tax amnesty. But we're going to go further. I'm going to announce a special tax amnesty unit to the issue of tax amnesty, because we believe that there is enough taxes due out there to assist us in combating the fiscal problems, the fiscal issues that we have. So our job is to comply with all international tax relations. Parliament is happening tomorrow, either tomorrow or the week after. We're going to pass another set of legislation to deal with international tax matters, because we want to be compliant. But if you're not compliant, you get blacklisted. St. Lucia is not been blacklisted, but St. Lucia has to take certain measures to ensure that we do not get blacklisted. So we're taking all these measures. But internally, we are trying our best to give a generous tax amnesty. And also, we are trying our best to relieve the burden on income tax on the people generally. We've said that all young people like yourself who want to buy a piece of land, right now you get 50% interest reduction. Young people. We've also said that if you have any medical expenses, 100% free. We know that certain people want to go abroad to get medical treatment, 100% tax free. We've increased the threshold to $40,000. We've said that there are certain things that if you're carrying a dependent relative, we've increased that. We've increased the allowance for child support in terms of if you have a child university, etc. So we are trying all means to reduce the tax burden. You may not know that St. Lucia's VAT rate is the lowest VAT rate in the region. So when people speak about gas prices, they don't talk about the VAT rate. St. Lucia's VAT rate is 12.5%. Certain countries are 19%. Most countries are 15.5%, 17%. St. Lucia is 12%. So 12.5. So we have to look at things in a holistic fashion. But I can tell you, we are trying our best to cover all the international requirements as it relates to tax and tax compliance.
Since you're speaking about finances, I think it was a couple of weeks ago you would have spoken about how much revenue the government has had to forego in terms of the revenue we collect on fuel. Even prior to that, you would have spoken about the environment for grants is not as giving as it used to be. When we realize some of these losses in terms of collecting revenue, also in our budget we have no new taxes, where does government recoup that revenue to still deliver on its projects and programs? Is it from another revenue source, or we have an excess of revenue? Where do we get that money back to be able to carry on smoothly?
Okay, that comes from economic activity, right? That's why we encourage investment. The more people employed, the more VAT we collect. The more people, the more investments that in the country, the more people purchase, the more people's buying power increases, the more customers. Right now, our main revenue source comes from duties, excise tax, import duty, VAT, and health and security levy. That's where it's collected from. Now, you may tell me that these figures are high because of inflation. Very, 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 very incomplete economic analysis. Very incomplete. And sometimes people who know better deliberately have that level of thing. There must be an element of inflation in these prices, in that revenue. But the question is, if there was not an equivalent level of increase in economic activity, at some point the revenue will begin to decrease. Because people's purchasing power would be less, they would purchase less. The only reason why, in spite of the inflationary parts in the revenue, revenues continue to increase because people's purchasing power or revenues do not decrease at a particular level because of people's purchasing power, because of economic expansion. So the answer to you is economic expansion, ease of doing business, make it easier for investors, allow the country to grow at a faster rate with less impediments. That's the solution that we can have only to these questions, because a lot of inflation, we have nothing to do with it. As I said to you in the public meeting, the only oil I know about is coconut oil. We do not import. We do not make oil. We import oil. When price of oil goes up, how can I be blamed for that? Questions?
Yeah, on a more personal note, I just wanted to ask, well, personal to you, on the passing of the late Everestus Jean-Marie. I don't think we had spoken to you since his passing, so just some thoughts, feelings on who he was, and what you could share about him.
Well, I'm glad you asked that for the last question, man. Everest was my friend first, my confidant, my advisor, somebody I bounce ideas with, one of my biggest critics, surprising. But the thing with Everest that is very difficult to find is trust. I trusted Everest, and he trusted me. So we could have these exchanges without any malice. And I can tell you, Everest loves St. Lucia. Do you know, very sad, do you know that no, I won't tell you. Everest loves St. Lucia. And all the attacks on him, which you must have seen in social media, all the innuendo, just because he loves St. Lucia and he thought what the government was doing was right. So of course he was personally attacked. That's what happens in St. Lucia. By the opposition, I can say. But may his soul rest in peace. I'm sure that Everest is going to be very difficult for me to replace. He was chairman of the Bank of St. Lucia. During his tenure, the Bank of St. Lucia made its highest profits. The records will tell you that. During Everest's tenure as chairman, the bank had its highest level of profitability and it's become the largest financial institution in the OECS. During his tenure at the NIC, pensioners, the minimum pension was increased to $500. During his tenure at the NIC, more people began paying NIC ever in the history of St. Lucia. So the governance of these institutions was at one of the highest levels when Everest was chairperson. I'll miss him, but the reality is his soul will have to rest in peace. Because the only good thing with death is that his suffering has ended, but Everest lived all the time with hope. With hope that someday that what would happen to him, what was happening to him, he thought he would get by his hope, but Everest was a good soul, a very good soul, a very good soul.
and I trusted him. And that's what's difficult to get in my position. I trusted Eris. I spoke to him on the 23rd of July as the last time, and we had a conversation for about 28 minutes. It's on my phone. The time, 23rd of July is the last time I spoke to him. And he was full of hope. He was thinking about coming back to St. Lucia because Eris was working on on the social housing project, which he wanted to deliver social housing to people of St. Lucia, because we have a housing crisis in St. Lucia. Low-income people find it very difficult for them to get houses. He was working on a social housing project with me, but God knows best. I'll miss him yet. That's it. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much, everybody. I wish you a safe return to your respective media organization.